Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Clint Eastwood's Edgar in 2011. So here we are with another review of this set, and this time, today I thought I'm not going to go for something like Mystic River, where it's really, really acclaimed. I've got massive hopes for it. I just wanted to kind of maybe get out of the way. One of the ones that I didn't have much hopes for at all, really. This film, Edgar, biographical film, panned really, you could say, especially critically, and most people calling it, very, very just a bad film, kind of Oscar bait kind of stuff, but yeah, one of Eastwood's worst films that a lot of people say. And I think judging by from what I've seen of the last few years of Eastwood, really just American Sniper. I did not like American Sniper. I thought it's not quite a bad film, but it's just not a film I really connected to. There's a lot of flaws in that film. Overall, on my first watch this year, I called it a weak film. Actually, I'll let you in on that, and I'll probably be rewatching it. Maybe within the next few months. We'll say that. I didn't like the film, and for me, that will probably be my least favourite Eastwood. Definitely one of the very worst. Now, this film, is this a bad film? And of course, it kind of it's basically chronicles. From the Palmer raids onwards, the kind of J. Edgar Hoover's, it's basically his time as the director, the first director of the FBI. Very, very interesting stuff, and the time period, of course, the stuff it covers. I'm massive on history, and I think it really interested me on paper, but I'd heard it was very, very bad. The only person that really, really praised the film, kind of famous, Roger Ebert. I think one of the quotes was masterful. Now, what do I think of it? Is it a bad film? Is it masterful? No, it's not masterful. It's not great. But I don't quite see the hate for this film. Actually, I think it's a good film. Actually, and I was not expecting that. I have to be honest. I'll say what I thought before the film. I thought, I don't really want to watch this, but it's an Eastwood film. I have to watch it and kind of review it. But Leonardo's in it as well. One of my favourite actors of all time, actually. Leonardo Dicaprio. He's great. Definitely in my top 15, I would say, actors of all time. He's really great in everything I've seen him in. So I did want to see it, eventually, but I didn't really want to, rush into it. But I thought just get it out of the way, and then it's meant to be one of the worst Eastwoods. It's meant to be a bad film. Turns out I thought it was a good film, and actually from the 45-minute onwards mark, it was very, very good. At times, it had some great moments. I did not expect to say that, but I think we'll start with the flaws, and basically, I'm not going to get into the plot because it's basically, biographical, and the way it's told at first is a bit convoluted, a bit more complex to kind of go into, but it covers a lot of stuff in American history, quite a few decades, and it kind of has some time jumps, and basically there's some narration, especially early on, by Leonardo DiCaprio as J. Edgar, and basically this film, it covers all this, and it covers what he done to change the FBI and how it was run and all this kind of stuff, and improvements you could say to it, and for crime in general as well. But it also goes into his home life, and his kind of could say his love life, and it kind of it does this. The first 40 minutes, I was a bit underwhelmed. I'll be honest with you, I thought it was pretty mediocre. Not a bad film though. I was thinking, this is not as bad as some say, and it is just slightly under average for me. It has got some stuff I was liking, but overall, it was what the problems were. The narration for me, is very much from the get go. Kind of just rushing in there, getting some narration in there, and it's kind of it doesn't draw me in. It kind of just made me feel a bit not overwhelmed, but a bit distracted. A lot of information. I gather a lot of people that aren't as well versed in some history stuff here, will just not. I can see how it can put people off. The way it's done, the narration is just too much, and it's all jumping in between different times. Bit too frantic, I feel. This, the rest of the film after that, after the 40-minute mark, it was much more subtle. Controlled in the transitions to the different time periods. And the narrative was much better, and it became an actual, character study, a consistent one, a very, very good one at that, and as I say, at times great, and basically it kind of it just wasn't, that interesting. There was a couple of parts that were quite flat early on. Naomi Watts, she was fine in the film early on. She definitely got better as the film went on. And yeah, it was just kind of stuff in the courtroom and everything, and it just wasn't as well done as it could have been. Yeah, and another thing that was, for me, it's not good. Certainly early on, does get better, especially the exterior scenes. Is the lighting. The lighting in this film was just way off early on. I just didn't like it. I thought it was a bit ugly actually. It picks up though, and another thing, when you see, Leonardo Dicaprio as an old man, basically, the makeup is bad, and as well, Armie Hammer, is in the film. He's one of the main characters. He plays Clyde, and basically becomes the second in command, and he goes about with Leonardo DiCaprio's character, J. Edgar, basically throughout most of the rest of the film. And the makeup on him when he's old as well, not good. The makeup on Naomi Watts was actually not bad, but for Leonardo DiCaprio and Armie Hammer, it's quite laughable at times. So that, of course, takes away a little bit. But just generally, it has to be criticised. It's not good. It's just pretty ugly, and it just looks very, very false at times. It is off-putting. But yes, once, I think the script, just in terms of characters, it just wasn't quite working. But it's mainly just the way it was put together. The editing, the just the nature of certain moments, and the narrative wasn't that strong early on. Once Armie Hammer comes into the film, around the 40-minute mark, I believe, and he plays Clyde, the second in command. This film picks up, and then it gets to a point, it's definitely around the hour mark, where it really becomes a very, very good film for the rest of the film. At times great. I think it really becomes a character study, which it wasn't quite achieving in a compelling way early on. I think it was just too much, a history lesson, you could say. I find Lincoln done this as well, and that's a little bit of a spoiler for my Spielberg stuff, but I didn't dislike that film, but I did think it got too bogged down in that, and it failed to really present a really compelling narrative, and just and this film kind of done that at first, and it was too much, just focusing on the information, kind of just just like going through a history book, and that's not really what film should do, and it wasn't. As I say, it wasn't visually interesting, really. The music, was very good. Once again, scored by Eastwood. But overall, I wasn't too impressed with the first 40 minutes. After this, it becomes a character study, as I say. Very, very compelling stuff, And Leonardo DiCaprio is great in this film. I think he's brilliant. Wow, what an emotional, performance. Certainly towards the end. Armie Hammer is great as well. Now, what they do here, they actually present, a very, very compelling and powerful relationship between these two men, and it's very, very powerful, and I felt a lot for this, very, very sympathetic, and a human, relationship. It was the most compelling, thing of the film, and luckily, it was really the main focus, you could say, and that's how Eastwood kind of brought out this character, how he uses it as a character study, and to bring out the emotions, the kind of the underlying emotions of Jacob, and basically it's thoroughly human, after this, and very, at times it is, a couple of moments is great as a drama, as and actually as a historical piece, it actually is much more effective in the way it kind of actually brings in some real footage, for example Martin Luther King, and it does all this, and of course stuff with it explores stuff with JFK and all this kind of stuff, really, really compelling ways. I think it was very well placed, all this stuff, and just told in a compelling way, more subtle, kind of much more of a better flow, and how it weaved it into the narrative. And I think that the first 40 minutes kind of failed to do this, in some ways. The lighting as well, it seems, and the cinematography in general was much better after this, and it has some really good shots in the film. The lighting overall is not great. It's definitely a flaw. Of course, the costumes are very good, but the actual makeup, definitely a criticise. Have to criticise that. It's not that good at all. It's quite laughable. But I think the more and more this film went on, the more invested I got. I think it was very emotional actually. In the second half, especially the last sort of half an hour of the film, it's just so well done. I think it's a thought provoking, a human relationship that these two have, and it really adds a lot of drama. And it kind of balances really well with the kind of the political side of it all. Even when it's not kind of doing this and kind of in the human drama sort of stuff, the home life. His mother as well is played by Judi Dench, and she's good in the film. And even when it's not doing this, it kind of is just as a political film, kind of a historical biographical film. And the way it kind of comments on American history and stuff, it's much more effective. I think. So overall, there was never really, after the 40-minute mark, any times where I was disinterested, really bored. There's a couple of moments I was a bit bored, because it was all over the place, and it was it's just a bit bland and flat visually, and it was just like reading stuff I kind of already knew, and that's not what a film's meant to be, and it's fine, fine saying a historical film should recite history, but not really, not in this way, basically, especially if you've never really learned about certain parts. And it presents it in this way, it's obviously not going to be very compelling for someone, and I just think it just wasn't done anywhere near as it could have been, but it was, after this, and it's actually really moved me, this film at times. It's a shame about the first 40 minutes, because I think it would have actually been a very good film if it had been as good, as the rest of the film. Definitely had some flaws after that, but not really any big ones, in terms of the narrative, the investment in the characters, the relationships, humanity, all this kind of stuff. Even the music, once that kicked in, the emotional scenes, it really, you could say it elevated, it really did. And the directing was just more confident, I feel. It was kind of, once he got out, I think Eastwood, it just got a bit bogged down too much in the actual, information of it all, trying to get it all kind of right, and he didn't really present an actual compelling piece, in terms of the engagement with the characters, all this kind of stuff, visually as well, and then, once it really gets into human stuff, it really excels. So I think I'm probably going to be quite alone in saying this is a good film, and has great moments, because it's not a liked film. It's very panned. I don't think by no means is this a masterpiece or a great film. But it is a good one. I think it could have been very good, based on the rest of the film. As I say, after the 40-minute mark, Armie was great in this film. He's a great actor. Of course, Call Me by Your Name. He's brilliant in that. And I think Leonardo Dicaprio, while not, it's probably one of the worst performances I've seen of him. It's still great. That just kind of says it all. I love DiCaprio. He's a great actor. One of my favourites. He is great in this film, really, portrays a lot of emotions. And yes, the older stuff, when they're older, it gets in the way of, the makeup, and kind of, it slightly taints some of the scenes, what they could have been. But, it doesn't ruin the scenes, and I still got, quite emotional moments, but the makeup and, overall, especially early on, the lighting is not good. And, of course, it does have some slightly generic moments, even after the 40-minute mark, and it's not, it's no masterpiece, but, I think certainly the first 40 minutes is very, very flawed, and it was slightly below average. I think I wasn't really that compelled. After that, it really picked up, and it became almost a different film. And films can do this and stuff, and can really redeem themselves. I think this one it is a good film, and it's actually quite a high good mark. I'd give it. I'd give it 77%. A good film, definitely. After the 40-minute mark, this was a very, very compelling, moving, character study. Quite effective. Definitely after this, as a historical piece, I think the direction overall was good. Definitely, I think judging the whole film, the cinematography again was decent actually. The music was very good. Once again, composed by Eastwood himself. He's a great composer. just brilliant. And I think the supporting cast as well, very good overall. I think Naomi Watts was fine early on, but she picked up as well. And then of course, Judi Dench was good. You just got quite a lot of, Adam Driver. I think this is his debut film role. Not too positive on that, but yeah, I think it was. It seems about right. But yeah, and he's a great actor, of course. He had a small appearance, but you've got a great cast overall. Definitely a flawed script overall, but it does really pick up this film, and I really I don't quite get the hate for this because other films they're kind of in a similar vein that are much more acclaimed and I think they don't get the hate that this film does, and I just think this is really compelling as the film goes on, and it kind of very human, moving and it's nice and controlled, and it's got kind of peaceful feel for most of the film. It was too frantic early on. It was too kind of bogged down in the kind of information of it all, and then kind of just going through a history book, really, you could say, and just having them play out on screen, and slightly generic as well and stuff. But and the narration was very flawed early on. But once this film, after the 40-minute mark, it is very good. I think definitely quite underrated overall. I don't get the hate, an actual full-on hate, kind of for this, especially critically, because this is actually the, it's kind of darkest hour sort of stuff. It kind of, it's a film that usually gets a lot of critical acclaim, and I think this is better than quite a few of the sort of similar films that I've seen that are like this, and it's critically panned, and it's an Eastwood film. Most of the time he does get praised by the critics, and for good reason, because he's one of my favourite directors. But this film didn't seem to really do it for a lot of critics and fans. Really, it's quite hated, and that's fine. That's fine. But it's not a great film overall. But I think it's definitely not a bad film. I think it's good. Most of the film actually very good, and it has flaws. But 77%, it's a high score from me, quite a high score. And yes, I think I definitely recommend it. I don't think this is a bad film at all. And another Eastwood film, that I was impressed by overall, but not the usual, Eastwood, greatness or anything. And it's definitely, but it's definitely better than American Sniper. Did not like that film. That's the only Eastwood that I've seen I didn't like. It's not an awful film or anything, but it's just a bit of a misfire for me personally. And there's some good stuff in there, but overall, that was the one that just it was a bit soulless at times as well. But yeah, I think and how could I root for it was just very I'll get to that when I review it maybe in a few months on a rewatch. But it's just. That's the only one really that doesn't quite do it for me. But the rest of his films have either been great or good, and that I've seen. And yes, look forward to watching the rest of these / rewatching and reviewing. And yeah, I think another one that makes this set. This is an essential set. I think even the ones that are panned, it seems like they're going to be pretty good. I've not seen Invictus as well, and Hereafter. They're not too acclaimed, but I look forward to watching all of these films, and yes, thanks for watching my review.